Hi, my name's Mary. I'm the Director of Youth Services at the Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. And we want to celebrate William Shakespeare's birthday. William Shakespeare was a very famous playwright from the Elizabethan period. Now that was a long time ago. He was born over 500 years ago. That's a long, long time ago. People dressed different then. Here's my dog, Maddie. And Maddie's wearing an Elizabethan ruff. This is a collar that people would wear around their necks, and it was considered very stylish. And, as you can see, she wears it well. Okay, Maddie. So now, I have a book to read to you in celebration of William Shakespeare's birthday. It is called Will's Quill by Don Freeman. This book was published by Viking Press in 1975. Many long years ago, in merry old England, there lived a country goose named Willoughby Waddle. Well, the other geese on the farm were content to spend their days nibbling on flowers and floating lazily on the lake. Willoughby was restless. He wanted to see the world, but even more, he wanted to be useful. And so early one spring morning, he set out for London town. Once inside the gates of the great city, Willoughby was startled to see so many people rushing helter-skelter through the narrow cobblestone streets. It was all he could do to keep from being trampled underfoot or crushed by the wheels of the passing carts and carriages. For a sensitive goose who was used to the quiet countryside, the raucous cries of peddlers hawking their wares were frightening. "Come buy my pots and pans," shouted one crier. "Ink, ink," called out another. "Who will buy my fine writing quills and ink?" A stout woman walked by, carrying a cage with two scrawny geese trapped inside. When she saw Willoughby, she yelled, "Come, my pretty, I can use a plump goose the likes of thee." Willoughby was terrified, but not so terrified he couldn't escape her grasp. He was beginning to understand why city geese looked so weak and downtrodden. Willoughby hid inside an empty barrel and tried to smooth out his ruffled feathers. If only he could survive this first day in London town. He knew he would find some way of being useful. Just when he felt it was safe for him to venture forth again, swash! Down from a window came a torrent of dishwater and bits of discarded vegetables. Willoughby was covered from the top of his head to the tip of his tail feathers. He had just learned that it was common practice for Londoners to empty their dishpans into the streets below. And while he stood there trying to recover from his latest indignity, a bearded young gentleman happened by. He stopped and spoke to Willoughby. "Allow me to assist thee," he said, brushing the cabbage leaves from Willoughby's wings. "Forsooth, it does seem life is full of woe, even for a lowly goose." The gentleman then reached into a leather pouch and brought out a fistful of ripe red blackberries, which he held in his cupped hand. "Here, my friend," he said, "thy need is greater than mine." Never had Willoughby been treated with such kindness. Then and there he vowed that somehow, in some way, he would be of use to this thoughtful man. So when the gentleman quickly walked away, Willoughby did his best to follow. But to his dismay, he soon lost sight of his friend. Willoughby found himself standing before the Globe, the most famous theater in all London, where every afternoon people came to see plays performed. Could his friend have disappeared into this huge, round building? Before he could decide what to do next, he was swept inside the theater by the onrushing crowd of latecomers. With much effort, Willoughby squeezed in and out between the people's legs. He finally managed to ease his way up to the front, near the stage, where he could better see the people's faces. The audience was growing more and more excited. "Ah, now comes the dueling scene," said a portly gentleman standing next to Willoughby. "'Tis the best part of the play." Two men, brandishing long, sharp swords, began leaping about, chasing each other around the stage. Willoughby looked up. He recognized the dueler dressed in the bright red costume. It was the very man who had befriended him earlier. Of course, Willoughby didn't know anything about play acting, and when he saw that his friend was in trouble, he became alarmed. This was his chance to return the favor. Willoughby flew up on the stage and nipped the other dueler by the seat of his breeches. "Gadzooks!" the man cried. "I've been bit by a wild goose." The audience burst into gales of laughter. They hooted and they howled. Then one ruffian shouted, "'Tis foul play," which was indeed very rude. The actors tried to go on with their duel, but it was no use. Besides, by now, everyone had begun to leave the theater. When he saw the terrible commotion, Willoughby sensed he had done something wrong. He fled outside as fast as he could. Any other goose would have given up, gone far away, but not Willoughby. He ran and hid behind a tree to wait for his friend. Would he be angry? When at last the actors came out of the stage door, they seemed in a most jovial mood. Even the two duelers shook hands. "Methinks that intruding goose was the best part of a poor play," said one of the actors. To this, everyone agreed. "Pray, write us a good play, Will," pleaded a fellow actor. "We have great need of poetic lines to speak. Thou art the only writer who sings from the heart." "I can but try," replied the young man called Will. "This very night I intend to finish the play I have been working on for lo these many moons. I shall see thee all anon." Once again, Willoughby followed his friend Will. Through one dark street after another they went until Will came through his house, stepped inside, and closed the door after him. For more than an hour, Willoughby waited in the moonlit street. Finally, just as he was about to waddle away to find a place to sleep, the shutters of a window opened wide. Willoughby looked up and saw his friend throwing several feathers down into the street. "Curse these quills," he was grumbling. "How can I write with such wretched pens?" Naturally, Willoughby was curious. He went over to inspect the feathers and found that each of their inky tips was badly broken. He immediately knew what was wrong. These pitiful-looking quills had come from city geese. Willoughby stuck his head under his wing and plucked forth one long, strong feather. With his beak, he tapped on the door. Not once, but many times. At last, the door opened. "How now, my faithful goose!" Will exclaimed. "What is thy pleasure?" Then, holding up his lantern, he said, "Ah, now I see. Thou art offering me a quill of thine own. 'Tis the answer to my greatest need," he said, lifting Willoughby up in his arms and carrying him to his garret room. "Come, be my guest." He gently took the feather from Willoughby's beak and then set about sharpening the quill to a very fine point. Will sat down at his desk and began to write, while Willoughby settled happily in a cozy corner and fell into a peaceful sleep. Throughout the long night, the playwright filled one page after another. He was inspired. When the rays of the morning sun beamed through the window, Will stood up and sighed, "'Tis done!" With a flourish of his new quill, he signed his name, William Shakespeare. Then turning to Willoughby, he said, "Without thee, dear goose, my play might never have been writ." Willoughby Waddle had indeed become a most useful goose. And from that day forward, he and his friend Will made their way to the Globe Theatre together, delighting the people of London town and filling their hearts with pride. And that is the story of Will's Quill, about this very Willoughby Waddle, the country goose, who came to the city and helped William Shakespeare write his play with a good quill from a country goose. This book was by Don Freeman. It was published by Viking Press in 1975, and we would like to thank them for the opportunity to read this book in celebration of William Shakespeare's birthday. So, once again, I'm Mary from the Children's Room at the Portland Public Library, and I hope you enjoyed this story.